What's up guys, Deltah here. Welcome back to the channel and thank you guys so much for tuning in. Today we have a pretty interesting topic as I'm going to be talking about why right now could potentially be the best time to get involved in the Division universe. With new content for the Division 2 and the brand new standalone Heartland on the horizon, now might be a good time to jump in and experience what the Division universe is all about. The Division universe is rich with diverse content and activities with something for every type of player, and most people can find something they will enjoy within the game. The Division franchise is unlike any other franchise out there on the market, and I'm going to demonstrate why. But that said, let's talk about the Division. The Division has gone through a wild ride from the inception of the franchise all the way to where we stand right now. It all started way back in June of 2013 when Ubisoft showcased a looter shooter in a pandemic-ravaged New York City under the Tom Clancy umbrella. The trailer hyped up expectations for the game beyond belief, and Ubisoft realized they might have captured lightning in a bottle with this new IP. Fast forward a few years, and the Division 1 released in March of 2016. Known then only as The Division, the game released to massive, pardon the pun, success, and became Ubisoft's highest earning IP ever at that point. When the Division launched after beta tests, it garnered millions of players within the first week. However, the game experienced a 93% reduction in its active player base within a couple of months, due to a myriad of issues plaguing the game, with the biggest concern being the scarcity of loot and quote-unquote bullet sponge enemies that turned off many people to the franchise. With the game, and ultimately the franchise, on life support, it was unclear whether or not that Ubisoft was going to continue supporting the game, but then came patch 1.4. Patch 1.4 overhauled many systems in the game, most notably reducing the scarcity of loot and increasing the rewards for playing the game. Every enemy had a chance to drop the best gear in the game, and this change did a lot to bring an influx of players back into the Division franchise. It seemed like Ubisoft and Massive had been given a second chance, and they continued that upward trajectory ever since with patches that included overhauling the Rogue system with Rogue 2.0, Dark Zone expansions, new game modes, and more story missions and world expansions. New game modes introduced in later patches include the Survival Game mode, which is a battle royale mode where you are stripped of your gear and have to loot up and complete a mission to extract yourself from the Dark Zone at limited power. This mode encompassed the entire map in a snowstorm, and it is up to you to fight to the Dark Zone and escape. You can toggle PvE and PvP game modes depending on your preference towards fighting other players, and the PvP is not limited to just the Dark Zone, but the entire map. The Last Stand mode, introduced in patch 1.6, is an 8 vs 8 mode in the Dark Zone where players fight to claim zones and upload data, similar to the Conquest mode from the Battlefield franchise or Domination from Call of Duty. This mode was the paid DLC drop after Survival and Underground, all of which are available through the Division Gold Edition. Skirmish is a 4v4 team deathmatch mode with no PvE enemies, unlike Last Stand, just two teams of agents going at each other. This mode marks the Division's first dedicated PvP mode in the history of the franchise, and coincides with the update that is widely regarded as the best patch in the Division's history, patch 1.8. Also released in this update was Resistance, a PvE game mode where players, solo or group, fight waves of enemies and complete objectives of increasing difficulty. Towards the end of Year 2, Massive introduced classified gear sets, which were basically better versions of existing gear that gave the players something to chase and increase their power as the game progressed. These classified gear sets were highly sought after and still are to this day, available in 6-piece bonuses that change the way you play and increase player power. This brings us to Year 3. With new content up in the air, fans of The Division weren't sure where they stood, whether the game was going to be supported for a third year or not. Ubisoft made a surprise announcement of The Division 2, which actually shocked the player base. In hindsight, it really shouldn't have been so surprising, seeing as The Division's launch was one of the best in gaming history, and Ubisoft thought they could capture the same magic a second time. Support for The Division still continues today, with global events that change how you play and offer increased loot rewards and ways to reduce your classified RNG by offering global event caches. Even though The Division is in its 5th year, it has a devout player base, and players can be found matchmaking for missions and in public areas such as safe houses, and even in the Dark Zone farming landmarks and going for manhunts. The Division 1 still brings a sense of enchantment and immersiveness in the post-pandemic world of New York City, with something for everyone. Whether you enjoy a nice and honestly compelling campaign, which I recommend to this day, or a diverse loot game with builds and gear sets with all different kinds of synergy. There's a surplus of build videos, guides, and a simple YouTube search will give you a guide to any content or any build you can think of. In addition to the PvE content, there's also a well-defined PvE presence in the game, Last Stand and the Skirmish game modes, not to mention the large PvP-enabled Dark Zone in the middle of the map. Inside the Dark Zones are supply drops and contamination events, in addition to landmarks that offer some of the best gear in the game and incentivize players to come together and produce some of the best PvP I've ever experienced. There is something so awesome about getting that god roll weapon or a classified item and having to fight through NPCs and players alike in order to extract the item and secure it. And if you don't want to fight, you can go to any number of extractions and safely secure your gear. If you're not interested in PvP, there's a deep exploration aspect to the game filled with stories, audio logs, collectibles, and lore to collect and complete. The Division 1 has something for all different types of players to try, with hundreds of hours of content to experience. Additionally, the game runs on many older systems, so if you don't have the newest console or PC items, then it will be no problem to run. At its current price point, which varies by platform, I absolutely recommend you pick up this game and give it a shot if you've been considering getting into the Division universe. The game introduces the player to the beginning of the franchise and the relevant characters, enemies, and gameplay loops to which a newcomer to the Division universe should familiarize themselves with, and still remains active to this day. So that's the Division 1. The Division 2 was released in February of 2019 after the disastrous release of Anthem, a looter-shooter from the publisher BioWare, a month prior. To sum up the Division 2, this game is a complex PvE-driven game with an increased focus on replayable content which attempts to innovate upon the shortcomings of the Division 1. It still has a PvP presence with 3 Dark Zones around the map and a dedicated PvP mode, Conflict, which is a combination between Skirmish and Last Stand modes from the Division 1. Where this game shines is the mission design and unique gameplay loops, as well as the build diversity and item uniqueness. This game added brand sets to high-end gear, meaning that each high-end piece has a brand attached to it that has its own characteristics and abilities. It also added gear specializations, and those come with varying perks and a powerful weapon that can be compared closely to Destiny subclasses. High-end builds become viable and are just as competitive as gear sets, adding a new level of depth to the game. Every mission is unique and takes the player on a journey throughout Washington, D.C., throughout notable landmarks like the Air and Space Museum and many more interesting places. This level of detail is extended to every mission in the game, including side missions and open world activities. Side missions became shorter versions of the main story missions with unique experiences throughout the city. This stands in stark contrast to the side missions of the Division 1, where they are essentially cut and pasted around the map. Not only do the side missions offer unique experiences, but there are also open world events called control points where enemy factions challenge your control of the area on a regular basis. Your actions and interactions with the control point officers will determine whether or not you hold onto the control point, which is an interesting addition to the game. In addition to the implementation of replayable content, the Division 2 offers many different options to change the way you play the game and interact with the world. You can change the difficulty of the world from normal all the way to heroic, and this extends to not just missions but every encounter in the game. In addition to increasing difficulty, you are also able to toggle global directives for your world, further changing your experience. After reaching level 30, which isn't even the max level, the entire map becomes invaded by a new faction known as the Black Tusk. The Black Tusk is your endgame enemy faction and helps drive the story further after completion of the vanilla campaign. The Division 2 adds strongholds, which are comparable to the Division's incursions, to break up the world tier grind post level 30 and add more depth to the world. These additionally add to the story by making the bosses of these missions the leaders of the enemy factions within the city. Hearing complaints that the story in the Division 2 was lackluster, the paid expansion Warlords of New York sends us back to New York City to Lower Manhattan to hunt and kill Aaron Keener, the main villain of the Division 1 and now the Division 2. This expansion also brought with it a level increase from level 30 to level 40 and new gear sets and brands to chase. Additionally, a new raid called United Ironworks was introduced in this expansion. This was the second raid introduced to the game, and players really seemed to enjoy it. The first raid, Operation Dark Hours, offered some of the best gear in the game in the form of raid exotics. This shows that the developers had a commitment to the PvE aspect of the game, and that sentiment is echoed by the addition of the Summit game mode, a PvE mode similar to the Resistance game mode from the Division 1, where you fight through randomized situations of increasing difficulty. The game also offers seasonal manhunts, where you hunt different rogue agents down and bring them to justice. These events reuse content and provide leagues with unique challenges and time trials to measure your time and provide loot incentives. The Division 2 is a very compelling offering, and contrary to the Division, this game is active and still receiving support from Ubisoft and Massive, as new content updates are planned for this year. This would be a great opportunity to hop into the Division 2 before the new content comes out, so you can experience the game before the new content releases. Well, this has been a brief overview of what the Division has to offer. Both of these games are available at a reduced price, and I believe you can get both with all expansions, which would equal hundreds of hours of content for less than $60. And I highly recommend picking up one of these games or both to try out before the Division Heartland, the brand new standalone game, comes out. In addition to Heartland, the Division 2 will also be receiving new content with new game modes and fixes for the game, so there's a lot to look forward to. It's a little bit of a dry period right now within the Division universe, but now is a good time to jump in and get your feet wet to the franchise before the release of new content. If you made it to the end of the video, please don't hesitate to drop a like and let me know what you thought. What do you guys think of the Division franchise? Will you give it a try? Let me know down in the comment section below. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Peace.